3, 2, 1. Good evening, everybody. Rob, Doug, Dave, Gabriel, Steve, Isabel, Ashley, Gladys, and everybody out there in Facebook and YouTube. Welcome to the Australian Poetry Hall of Fame. I'm Thundercloud. Mum calls me James, washing away the garbage, leaving rainbows after rain. Let's have a few linguistic games. Begin by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the land on which we broadcast, the Kamilaroi people, and acknowledge the continuing connection to the land of the elders. Tonight I'm going to break from tradition, and usually I begin with some Australian poets. This is called This Quiet Dust Was Gentlemen and Ladies. This quiet dust was gentlemen and ladies and lads and girls, was laughter and ability and sighing and frocks and curls. This passive place, a summer's nimble mansion where bloomin' bees fulfilled their oriental circuit, then ceased like these. It's about the ephemeral nature of everything. And one of the quotes, and I'm not sure where he said it was from, but what's real? The only thing that's real is things that don't change.
Who said that?
Well,
Plato.
No, Wayne Dyer quoted it this morning.
Oh.
and because, you know, every second our bodies change, everything's changed, our position's changing, and nothing's real.
Plato said that appearances change all the time, but everything has got some abiding nature inside which you can't see.
Mm. Yeah, so that was. I just, like, when I knew nothing about Emily Dickinson, I know a bit more now, but that one...
Who told you she performed that? I've never heard of her performing.
Well, apparently she did.
In front of people?
Oh, yeah.
When was it? How long ago was this?
Oh gosh, 1800s.
1800s.
Yeah.
1860s.
Mm. Yeah. Now the other one that he mentioned was Rabindranath Tagore, who won the Nobel Prize for Literature in 1913, and he was one of the first poets and also international poets to win that. And this is from that book, which I've forgotten the name of it because I only learnt it this morning. However, it's called Who Is This? And it's about the ego. I came out alone on my way to my tryst, but who is this that follows me in the silent dark? I moved aside to avoid his presence, but I escape him not. He makes the dust rise from the earth with his swagger. He adds his loud voice to every word I utter. He's my own little self, my Lord, he knows no shame. But I am ashamed to come to thy door in his company. Rabindranath Tagore, who is this? So that's that one. Right. Now, that's pretty much it for my opening today, apart from the fact that I do want to mention that coming up in October, we've got the Guyra Trout Festival, 7th, 8th and 9th of October in Guyra here. And you can catch a fish in the dam. And but we have a bush dance. The big hairy bush dance band's coming all the way from Armidale up here on the Friday night from 6 p.m. to 9 p.m. Tickets are 15 for adults, 10 for children, 40 for a family. Available on Eventbrite. And the other one is the Guyra Trout Fest Poets Breakfast on a Sunday morning, 10 to 12 on the 9th of October. And if you're not being poets, it's $10 for adults, 5 for kids, but if you're being a poet in it, then you get in for free. And we have a special guest poet, Paddy O'Brien, from the Tweed Valley coming, and he worked in Guyra here in the 1960s, spud picking. So I just wanted to read one of his poems. He dropped in here probably, I don't know, about 4 or 5 months ago. It was November. Maybe, no, it wasn't November. It was around about February, I think. It was around about the Tamworth Music Festival thing. Anyway, and he dropped off his book, and he wrote this in the late 90s, early 90s, and it was about his time in the 60s, spud picking here in Guyra. So I'm just going to read out one of him tonight. But this is not Guyra spuds, this is a bit about Guyra hospitality, visitor from the Tweed. I met Herb and Dot Williamson back in 1965. I was 18 at the time. That year my father died. I knocked on their door up in Lanky Street. My clothes were worn, a patch needed in my pants, no shoes upon my feet. With only 2 pubs, Guyra, town friendly and small, I asked Herb for a job picking spuds. I stood there, lean and tall. He's about this tall, he is. Herb told me of some other growers, Star, Simpson, others I long forgot. He said he had his team to pick an 88 crop. As I left his house, he noticed my clothes were worn and torn. A frown upon his solemn face showed that he was quite concerned. He called me back then. He said, you can start Monday, past Ward's mistake on Snowflake. You can pitch your tent there on Sunday. Picking wasn't easy that year. Low tonnage because of the drought. Flies that can carry away. Herb offered us more money to try and help us out. Gordon Williamson dug the Sebagos, the bags now laid in a row. 10 rows to a land, Lenny Stanley said. That's a way to go. Although the frosts were bitter, some years it even snowed, backache was part of the job as the Ford 500 arrived for its daily load. When the season's picking finished, to the pub we'd make our way to celebrate the end of another harvest and collect our well-earned pay. My life associated with the Williamsons I'll never forget. I was treated like part of the family. Many a friend I made and met. As we shook each other's hands and said our last goodbyes, Jim, Joe, Lenny, Duncan and all the crew told jokes and made up a few good lies. I'll see you again, Paddy, at the pearly gates, jokingly Herb did shout. St. Peter will be there, I bet, handing hot buttered potatoes out. All right. Okay, so we are very fortunate tonight, everybody, to have a real bush poet in here from Tamworth.
No, Newcastle.
Oh, Newcastle. Yes, David Melville. I met David down in Orange about 2 and a bit years ago.
Yeah.
So welcome. Thank you, David.
Just to fill you in, about 4 years ago, I went in to see a muster, you know, County Western muster. I was travelling around and got up with this group. They said, follow us around. So I did. And I found the song bored silly because I'm not a real country music fan. And I thought, right, well, I can't sing and I can't dance and I can't play anything, so I'll do a bit of bush poetry. So I started to write a bit and do a bit for the audiences up there. Now, to say I'm a bush poet, a bush poet would, say no thanks, because it doesn't go along with the proper format of bush poetry, like poetry. But anyway, I didn't know what this was tonight, so I could throw one in, but you've got to promise me that you're not politically correct.
Not at all.
Not at all?
No.
All right, well, I'll do 2 humorous poems.
Offend everyone.
Let's hope they're humorous. Bluey was a kettle dog, oh, he could muster and he could muster well. But he became notorious for his goddamn awful smell. Bluey would drift around quietly passing wind. There was only one consolation. Before Bluey did it, Bluey always grinned. Now when Bluey grinned, rodeo clowns would lose their smile. Emus get up, run and fly for 100 miles. When Bluey grinned, people would run and hide. Legend has it that one bloke stayed behind, just to commit suicide. When Bluey grinned dogs, yes, dogs and hold their breath, fleas would jump off them, preferring to fall to their death. Oh, it not only came out obnoxiously, it became out with enormous velocity. You'd stand behind Bluey and miss that grin. If the blast didn't kill you, the smell would do you in. Dogs were blown off their chain, vanishing, never to be seen again. It could blow the barbs off a barbed wire fence. Nothing could survive Bluey's flatulence. Oh, not all bad. Windmills producing electricity doubled their capacity. Tropical storms were blown out to sea. Bushfires snuffed out, saving life and property. The coronavirus was eradicated, and cane toad numbers were nearly annihilated. The undertaker used to feed him baked beans when business was grim, and the pest exterminator reckons that Bluey's smell could kill cockroaches quicker than him. Bluey's gone now, past wind too close to a bushfire. You've been in orbit if that flame coming out of his bum had just shot him that little bit higher. Oh, we all laugh now when we talk about Bluey and his grin. But we thank the good Lord for getting rid of him. Well, we'll keep on a humorous note. When I broke this poem back in 2018, it got quite a good laugh, but now the guy wonder. So anyway, Man from Snowy River. Scare the daylights out of people when you say that. But I've heard it 100 times, at least 100 times. I've seen it done in numerous forms. The short version, anybody know the short version? There was movement at the station for the word had passed around that the colt from all regret had got away. So they went and got it back. I've seen a bloke do it backwards. He walked up the stage, turned his back and did it to the audience backwards. I've seen, what's the young bloke, up at Winton? Greg North do it fantastically with hats, changing everything as he did each character. And I've heard a woman sing it to music by Slim Dusty, and it was fantastic. But I got to thinking, what would the poem be like if the cult got away in 2018 when I wrote this? A bloody different poem altogether, as you can imagine. So here we go, and as I say, with apologies to Banjo Patterson and anybody who's politically correct here, we'll have a shot at it. There was movement at the station for the word had passed around that the cop from old Lidlet had got away. They changed the name from old Regret to old Leadlet, because ours were very difficult for the new Chinese owners to say. So they sent a drone out with a camera to see if that cop was about. And they found it in a gully too steep, too dangerous for the drone to chase it out. This was a job for experts, and they couldn't do alone. So they called Clancy of the Overflow, Horse Recoverers Proprietary Limited, on their mobile phone. Now it's 2018, so Clancy answers, "Please hold, your call is important to us. We're sure your horse won't go far. Why not stay on the line? Why not press 1 to leave a message? Or why not stay on the line and listen to Clancy recite the old 33 verses of the Man from Snowy River, accompanied by guitar." Off the freeway they came, 3 quad bikes kicking up a roar. There was Clancy, there was that skinny little kid, and there was a Sheila, but we're not real sure what he brought her for. Clancy stood up for them. He said that kid has ridden BMX bikes and that's what's made him tough. The girl, well, she hails from Queensland, where they bring them up tough and they breed them rough. Now it's 2018, so Clancy stands and solemnly acknowledges the traditional owners of that gully And the Dreamtime visions everywhere. Promises faithfully that he won't ride over any sacred sites that might happen to be there. Oh, off they took at a cracker pace towards that dangerous gully. We sat back and watched the visions unfold, coming from the drone to our telly. The first to ford was a kid, 4 flat tyres about 5 kilometres out. But we weren't concerned. We knew that Clancy and that Sheila could turn that colt about. Oh, they hit that gully at a cracking pace. Sparks flew like lightning as they hit rocks and stones and more. This was quad bike riding at its best. This was quad bike riding at its utmost. This was quad bike riding like you've never seen before. Then the girl stopped. We zoomed in to see what was happening there. It's an ad. She's promoting a range of Clancy of the Overflow underwear. Oh. Now we were concerned. Would the stresses and the problems of the last few days keep Clancy from the fray? You see, it's 2018. Yes, Clancy's come out. Clancy of the Overflow is gay. But Clancy kicked on, ignoring workplace rules and regulations that said he had to rest. Clancy found that colt. Clancy passed the test. Clancy was the best. Now to calm that horse, Clancy hit it with a tranquilizer dart. And then when leading that horse out, the quad bike stalled and then it wouldn't start. But who comes racing into that gully to save the day? That's right, that bloody Sheila, screaming and shouting, I demand equal pay. Well, poets don't write songs and sonnets about Clancy and his dangerous riding of that gully. No, we watch rerun after rerun of that Sheila leading that horse out and embarrassing the man they now call Nancy of the Overflow on the telly. Thank you. Well, I managed to offend everybody.
Yeah, oh please.
Not me, I'm politically correct.
As the years go past, I think I'm less able to say that.
Oh, no, it's great. Thank you. All right, and if we got time later on, I might ask you to come up and do one more if you've got another one.
Yeah, I'd love to do longer runs. I'd love to do a serious one.
Yeah, towards the end.
Right.
All right. Yeah. Okay. Well, the next person I've got to come up is Gabriel, in just in one moment, and here we go. Please don't be offended if you hear your name in this poem, because yours is in it. It's just like they're just random names chosen out of the air. I suppose this is kind of politically as incorrect as you can get too. I'm not too sure. Please, on the National Register of Unremarkable People, there's men named John, Steve, Paul, and Peter. Women named Jessie, Chrissy, Shelley, and Sharon, Barbara, Mary, Kate, Sarah, and of course, Karen. Every night the unremarkable people all get pissed when they pass away. We celebrate they're not missed. With unremarkable lives they contribute a little bit, but mostly leech off others, watch TV, smartphones or sit. The unremarkable people have all been heaven sent as an example of how not to live and how life shouldn't be spent. Hedonistic drifters without plans in self-dug holes as opposed to planned success and achieving goals. But you can be remarkable if you take some action. Proactive plans with goals and passion always make some traction. With a definite purpose, you'll be successful and achieve anything you imagine with action and self-belief. Gladys, Gabriel, Donleavy, come on up. A remarkable person.
Evening, everybody.
Gabriel.
I've been depressing you for the last 3 times I've been here, and I might bore you tonight instead, but it won't be so depressing. But I want to try something. As I've said before, my project is to explore the boundaries of words and poetry and find poems that deal with things that the majority of poetry doesn't. And one of the things I'm looking at, and one of the things I want to write myself, is haptics. Most of you got phones, and on your phone you touch to verify your identity. Not on all phones, but on a lot of them. And I casually collect pretty stones. I've done this ever since I was a kid. And since I've become an old man, I collect stones from historical sites. Now, in a lot of literature and plays, like King Lear, for example, he says, "Ye are white stones," meaning you're absolutely inert and dead. Other people, on the other hand, say stones carry a charge. So I thought, with us being poets and therefore sensitive, it'll be a little experiment to see if two stones I've got in my hand, I'll show it to the audience because you'll have to judge on visual. One is big and the other is little, relative to each other. One comes from one of the sites of the worst things that people ever did to other people in history, and I'm not going to say it because you'll be sick and tired of hearing me use that word over the last few weeks. And the other, from the same country, comes from a place of great joy, liberation and freedom from oppression. Now, there shouldn't really be any difference because they're just stones, but maybe you think different. So what I'm going to do is, while I'm reading this out, pass these around, pass them to neighbour, blah blah blah, over here, pass them around, and make a note or remember which one you think was from the good place and which one from the bad place. Big stone, good place; big stone, bad place; little stone, good place; little stone, bad place. And that'll tell you if it's random or if you're a bit sensitive or it's just fake news, and it'll tell me that there is something or nothing in it when I'm pursuing haptic poems and writing them myself. So, here we go. Big, little, good, bad. Hold on as long as you like, but do pass them to your neighbour. So, I've written one thing myself, and I've got three relatively short ones from, what I hope are the boundaries of poetry. And here is one by D.H. Lawrence. You've all heard of him. And he had a surprising range. He wasn't always heavy. This is called Intimates, written in 1930. "Don't you care for my love?" she said bitterly. I handed her the mirror and said, "Please address these questions to the proper person. Please make all requests to headquarters. In all matters of emotional importance, please approach the supreme authority direct." So I handed her the mirror, and she would have broken it over my head, but she caught sight of her own reflection, and that held her spellbound for 2 seconds while I fled. That's his boundary. And now I've got a geographical frontier one, which we'll do first, temporal. Catullus, writing poems while Julius Caesar was on the rise, in the latter period of Pompey, whom Julius Caesar effectively overthrew in round about 50 BC. And this is, again, from Catullus. I won't say anything more about it because it'll get obvious. Because he has, oh no, it won't rhyme because it was originally in Latin, of course. Because he has bright white teeth, Agnutius whips out a tooth flush on all possible and impossible occasions. You're in court. Counsel for defence concludes a moving peroration. Grin. At a funeral, on all sides heartbroken, mothers weep for only sons, grin. Where, when, whatever the place or time, grin. It could be a sort of tick. If so, it's a very vulgar tick, Ignatius, and one to be rid of. A Roman, a Tiburtine, a Sabine washes his teeth. Well-fed Umbrians and overfed Etruscans wash theirs daily. The dark Lanuvians, who don't need to, and we Veronese all wash our teeth, but we keep them tucked in. We spare ourselves the nadir of inanity, inane laughter. You come from Spain. Spaniards use their morning urine for mouthwash. To us, that blinding mouthful means one thing and one only: the quantity of urine you have swallowed. So that's a time-travelling light piece about the subject you don't often hear in a poem, ancient teeth washing. And
Would it be take the teeth out? Like it referred to the removal.
oh yeah, yeah, they did that. They replaced them with wooden ones usually, which they carved out of relatively hard wood if they could get it. But that was only for the relatively richer. Yeah. Now this book is Chinese poetry translated into English from the golden age of China, which is the Tang and Song dynasty. While Europe was in the Dark Ages after the Roman Empire, but before the rise of the Crusades and the medieval period, which some of us think is another Dark Age, never mind. The Dark Age in Europe corresponded with the Golden Age in China. China was the dominant power. Chinese cities were the biggest cities in the world, and the Tang dynasty was the only dynasty, even including the communist dynasties, which had a woman emperor, and a woman emperor who wasn't just like a Hatshepsut figure standing in for a husband, was there in her own right. And there wasn't one like that, famously, until Catherine the Great in Russia. And the Tang one was much better than him. Also, back in those days, if you had the travel bug, and a lot of the Tang Chinese did, you had to go by boat slowly or on a camel overland. The Silk Road was being built. It hadn't finally been built in the early Tang period. So a lot of those Chinese phones from that period are the equivalent of looking at TripAdvisor or Booking.com today. But the result is that they're using words to give you a picture of a place in a way that these days you wouldn't do over here. They wouldn't do either in China, because everybody got cameras. So try this. A warm red in the sunlight, the pool where fish can be seen. And green, the shade of the village trees where crows hide themselves at dusk. Here gather small boys and greybeards with twinkling eyes. The deer are startled at the sight of men. But monkeys come unbidden at the sound of drums. This I tell the girls picking mulberries on my way home. A hasty prinking, and in small groups girls gather by their wicker gates to see the governor. Squeezed close, they stepped on each other's madder-dyed skirts. Old and young all turn out to harvest the wheat. Crows and kites wheel over the sacrifice in the village, and old tipplers are sleeping it off in the road at dusk. Thick, thick the jute leaves, lush the hemp. One family boiling cocoons scents the whole village. Across the fence, the prattle of girls reeling silk. Granddads with sticks are nodding tipsily. New wheat is picked, flour ground to ease my hunger. As I ask when the bean leaves will begin to yellow, date flowers fall rustling on my gown. Spinning wheels whir at both ends of the village. One in fibre cake sells cucumber under the willow. Drowsy with wine, so far to go, I feel an urge to sleep. The sun is high and parched, longing for tea. I knock at a cottage door to try my luck. Soft grass, fresh washed by rain, light sand where horses raise no dust. Shall I ever be free to plough the fields again? In warm sunlight, hemp and mulberry glint like water. No, say that again. In warm sunlight, hemp and mulberry glint like water. The breeze is spiced with mugwort and artemisia. This, surely, is where I belong.
Oh, bravo.
Tell me, would that poem in Chinese have rhyme and meter?
In China, no. It would have something close to rhyming, like matching rhythm, more like a musical kind of a pattern than a strip. So meter probably yes, more often than not meter. Rhyme never. There are relatively few syllables in Chinese to this day. We kang, wang, blah, and everybody get bored. In other words, they don't rhyme because it's too difficult, they don't rhyme because it's too easy.
Yeah. No, just want to have a story.
And lastly, here is one I wrote in the last week. I thought I need to get out of writing about things that are depressing or trying to empathise with the worst of humanity. What would it be like if I thought there was good in everybody and everybody had an angel and all of that? Could I fake it till I make it about it?
Bring it on.
So, this is called Before Waking. In the last 200 years, we've multiplied our fears. Each advance in our technology failed to improve our psychology. Though we stepped up our velocity, we made new hells with each atrocity. On paper enhancing human rights, in practice worsening human plights. How would any fair onlooker sense progress in Earth's pressure cooker? Yes, we took man to the moon. Yes, we will return there soon. Yes, the Nazis were defeated. Yes, bacterial foes retreated. Yes, women from oppression rose. Yes, support for greenness grows. But after all, you cheeky chappie, you cheerful chappie, why are so many so unhappy? The situation is so sad, humanity seems to be so bad. Easy to believe the worst of every new encounter. Cursed our eyes that see thick black smoke from smiling mouths of ruling folk. We have built up new protection to stop malevolent detection. We live through lockdowns behind screens, shielding from mere threats of screams, distancing ourselves from scenes of slaughter, jettison babies with bath water. So in all this dystopian pain, can we wend our way to warmth again? Can we discern among the rubble people who transcend their trouble? We could, in our daily living, find pleasure in just simply giving. We could, like the Polish nation, through compassion, draw salvation. Somehow, we might see authentic good in you and me.
There you go.
That's what we're trying to be cheerful.
Who wrote that? Oh, you do. Well done. Yeah.
All right. The quatrain I wrote yesterday actually. Cho Zen. The world can make you laugh or the world can make you cry. Feed you and nurture you. The world can make you die. You can be a boy, girl, man, woman, other cat, monkey, hen. Don't let the world affect you or wash over you. Be Zen. Go Zen. And there's another one here that another quatrain that I wrote, which I'll just share with you as well, because again, I've been sort of like studying my inner self in my meditations, working on spiritual aspects of self and whatever. Out of this is a 6 line thing, but I really like the first line, and I think, and I could almost just, life is a set of brackets within an infinite soul. I could just leave it at that. But I don't want to Life is a set of brackets within an infinite soul. Growth of the spirit's the goal. Life's an adventure not to be missed. Ascending spirits pass through peace, joy and bliss. Life can be boring or interesting. It's all a free choice. And that's the best thing. Okay. Steve, come on up. Welcome.
Japanese form. What's it called?
Like, a bit like haiku or senryu, yeah, these little short kind of things, yeah.
Yeah, good. I'm going to have to take over depressing duties.
Okay.
I find it very much
Pressing or depressing?
Well, if
this is called
Not redressing.
this is called reflecting on the ceremony. The scenic gravestones, flowered and prayed over, testifies to the enduring mysticism of death. But for the living, nothing rests with corpses. Truth lies between the butchered souls of dead ancestors and their indestructible ethical commitments, such as they were. In terms of the ceremony, beauty hovered there, above the frantic normality as the service closed. Knowledge was imparted, and yet she is dead. Whatever was taught must now be interpreted. And last, bitter auntie, generously tearing into her enemy's coffin. Hard cultural lessons doth death teach breath, even as we fail to make words from them. But after the cathartic resurrection of hope lie inflated silences, empty of poetry, whatever the critic resolves, whatever the ritual. This is called poetry. Communication out of and into flux, yet strangely devoted to a searing consciousness that needs to word mad experiences into beings worthy of interpretation. Brainache alchemy, weaving existential torture into shareable madness. Mimetic, cathartic, witty, ecological, kind, profound, blasphemous, divine, observational, cruel, mystical, wise, historical, despairing, empathetic, disgusting, tender, mental, ethereal, moral, political, ironic. Words crafted into synergy. Poetry justifies its presence by carving from its conceptual universe enough first to universalise the idea that existence can theoretically be bearable for all. Words.
No, you used cathartic in both those pieces.
Oh, did I?
You did, but that's not a bad thing, because poetry is cathartic.
Well,
you
that's why I wanted
you
to
get
start
shit out,
Yeah.
and that's why, like you said, it come up here, I hope I don't depress you. No, but that's what it's about. It's about grr and sharing whatever with the world, because there's always someone who creates this empathy, and we all get in and understanding, and yeah, it's good. Thank you very much.
Oh, cheers, thank you.
Yeah, great. So, a New Zealand girl named Jackie travelled all the way from Taranaki to Sydney and got off the boat and said, I'm here to buy a goat, I'm not here to buy a lamb nor a pig to make in a ham, neither do I need a cow to milk or a horse to pull a plough. I don't even want a swan, sell me a goat and I'll be gone. Honestly, it's not that hard. Direct me to the goat sale yard. She went to Bondi, bought a goat, took it to Manly on a boat. The waves were big and also scary, nearly tipped the Manly ferry. In Manly, she was offered cocaine. Well, we all know that's where they snort the most of it in Australia. But when suddenly it began to rain, the rain cleared, leaving a rainbow, because Manly always has the best blow. Then half the team refused to play because they thought the rainbow was gay. But Jackie was happy with the goat and returned to Taranaki on the slow boat. I was just having a dig at a few Manly football players there, but anyway. All right. And after that, we got Gladys. Are you ready for yours?
We've got a gum tree thing out there.
Yeah, I'll go and grab it. And if you, well, how about we get Rob on up, and I'll go and do that while Rob comes up and has a play. Rob, and then Gladys. Come on up, Rob.
Rob up. Yes.
And I'll go and see Jackie in Taranaki. Barely plays, wouldn't play because of a rainbow. Oh, I don't know.
old songs. This song, it's called the Bushranger song. It was published by someone using the pseudonym DML in Adelaide in the South Australian Register on the 21st of August 1847, page 2. Bushranger song.
Let bygones be bygones, what are they to me? My step is as free as the foam of the sea. Let sympathy, feeling, and friendship be gone. The happiest living is living alone. No recitals of ills that are past or to come. No strife for supremacy ruffled my home. When thus seated, prepared for my homely lone feast, I am king, subject, warrior, lawyer, and priest. To the devil with politics, judges and law, for the crown or its puppets, I care not a straw. The world's my stage, and my tenants mankind, as they often acknowledge, with purses well lined. Let the mountain for me in the lonesomest wild, where huge rocks in disorder are fitfully piled. There the darkest rude figure or gloomiest cave be my well-furnished person, my altar, my grave. Let bygones be bygones, what are they to me? My step is as free as the foam of the sea. Let sympathy, feeling, and friendship be gone. The happiest living is living alone.
Okay, on a lighter note, here's a Irish song from the, I think it's from the mid 19th century. It's by a Irish poet and songwriter called John Francis Waller. It's called The Spinning Wheel.
Hello, the moonlight to shine is beginning. Close by the window, young Eileen is spinning, and over the fire her blind grandmother sitting is crooning and moaning and you be shoving and moving your stool and singing the wrong tale song of the cruel? Merrily, cheerily, noiselessly whirring, swings the wheel while the foot stirring, sprightly and lively and merrily ringing, fills the sweet voice of the young maiden singing. There's a form at the casement, the form of her true love, and he whispers with face bent on waiting for you, love. Get up on the stool, do little matches, step lightly, and we'll roll in the grove while the moon shining brightly. Merrily, cheerily, noiselessly whirring, strings the wheel while the book's stirring, sprightly and lightly and merrily ringing, trills the sweet voice of the young maiden singing. The maid shakes her head on her lips, lays her fingers, steals on from her seat, longs to go and yet lingers. A frightened glance turns to her drowsy grandmother, puts one foot on the stool, spins the wheel with the other. Merrily, cheerily, noiselessly whirring, swings the wheel while the wood's stirring, sprightly and lightly and merrily ringing, fills the sweet voice of the young maiden singing. Lazily, easily swings now the wheel round, slowly and lowly is heard now the real sound, noiseless and light, the lattice above her, the maid steps and leaps to the arms of the lover. Slower and slower and slower the wheel swings, lower and lower the reel rings. The reel and the wheel stop their ringing and moving to the crew of the young lovers, hiding like a robin.
Okay. He's an Australian one.
Once more I'll be playing fishing shack along the road to Donleavy. Well, the blue gums are growing and the rich is flowing beneath that sunny sky. Well, Mommy and Daddy are waiting for me, and the pals of my childhood once more I will see them no more. Will I roam when I'm heading right home along the road to Donleavy? Then no more will I roam when I'm heading right home along the road to Donleavy.
Thanks a lot. Well, thank you very much, Rob. Rob Baker, everyone. And time for Gladys Wilson to come on up. And she's got a special one that she wrote, one of the first one she wrote when I got here, but she had written a couple before. But here she is, Gyra's very own poet extraordinaire. It's true. Gladys does poetry at the old people's home up there, don't you?
Yes, I've done it. Really happening. I think I'm on the 14th one, but the one I'm writing is a picture of home. And it's all on, you know, my home, my bringing up my home life, I think, and a few things that I'd rather forget, but anyway, that's life. Okay. Well, it's lovely tonight to be back here at the Australian Poetry Hall of Fame, and it's lovely to have a newcomer. Very welcome. This is what it's all about, just introducing new people, and it's lovely to have Doug back. Doug's had a couple of weeks off, and it's lovely to have Any rate, lovely to have you all in here. So this one I wrote, I think, close to 3 years ago, because I think I wrote it just before James came, and it's just simply called A Gum Tree's Lament. And I grew up in, you know, amongst all the gum trees and things, and worked on properties where they're all gum trees and whatever, so yeah, so this is it. At any rate, A Gum Tree's Lament. I am a precious old gum tree. I've stood here for more than 100 years or so, and faced all kinds of weather, with wind, rain and snow. I once felt quite at home on this land where I still dwell, but please take a moment of your time. My sad story I will tell. As you know, many trees were all around me, but of course they are sadly gone. Their stumps still surround me, where once they all proudly stood upon. As I stand alone in the moonlight, with my leaves all silvery glow, and dream of the days when I was a young gum tree, all those years ago. Back then I stood so proud and tall, and was a treasure to behold, but the sound of chainsaws now just makes my sap run cold. You may think of me as no longer useful, and my days are nearly done, but I've sheltered you many times from the blazing sun. I give refuge to the weary stock, as they rest beneath me every night, and flocks of birds now nestle on my branches after their morning flight. But I beg of you, my good friends, just spare me a little thought, as you glance at my ragged old body, where many battles have been fought. Of course, I'm not what I used to be, but surely I can trust that you will not cut me down and turn me into sawdust. As my roots all start to tremble now, with weeping branches hanging low, and still I dread to think of that terrible day when I may have to go. As I wake up each morning and thankfully take another breath, I pray that you will leave me here just to die a natural death. Now looking to my future, whatever that may be, but I always will remain a precious old gum tree.
Now, who have I got? Sorry, Gladys. We got, I guess, Ashley will be up in just one moment.
Can I take the results?
Yes, oh, sure. Yeah, come on up. Look, hey, now, what's it? But just one thing. You mentioned that dog, the farty dog.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. Today I got gas for just 99 cents. It was the cheapest baked beans in the supermarket. It was, yeah. I was feeling a bit hot today, so I also took a dip, but I don't really like hummus.
Okay. Little one, big one. Who didn't register or feel anything at all? Oh. Well, I never. Who thought the little one was good?
No.
Who thought the little one was bad?
You me. 1, 2, 3.
You're right.
Yeah.
Thanks.
I muscle tested it. That's how because
Well, I can't say I felt anything. Just that the large rock reminded me of other rocks. So it was more of a memory rather than a
Sure.
haptic.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's very definite.
no, when you introduced them, you actually waved the big rock and alluded it to being from the bad place, and then I sort of got this intention like thing from you, but then when I felt them, that little one had a dark energy. And then I muscle tested them, so I held them both and pushed, and the little one made my arm go weak.
So did you?
I was thinking that maybe if you made the big one
Push the bias the other one. Yes.
Okay, so, well, I'll bring Ashley on up, and so while he's making his way up, here goes, there's another short one. Positive or negative, what are you going to be? Healthy, joyous, successful, love, peace and harmony, strong, wealthy, courageous, poised, living creatively. Attitude decides if you live positively or negatively. That's it. Quatrain. Welcome, Ashley Albanese. Attitude.
Well, my hypothesis is that everyone's looking expectantly. That's the good thing when you have a motive or a theme, like Three Rulers. My hypothesis is that appearance is never reality, but then again, perhaps it is. I have one ruler, as you may see, but I have two, now standing together in eternity. Now, I have not got three to go hypothesis, implication and test or parameter, but at least I have, as you see, one ruler. Now, I had a very bad feeling with that little rock. I had a very bad feeling with that little rock. Now, when I came in tonight, I found a poem in, again, one of the books I got going down Bradley Street past Mr. Bennett's wonderful bookshop, and he was throwing this on the bargain bin. And I spent hours, I'm waxing on tonight, but reading some poetry in this I'd never read before. I don't want to put it to the camera, so it's an old classic collection. It's a wonderful collection. And
The Sun
I spent,
Poetry Series, Australian Poetry Now, edited by Thomas W. Shapcott.
yeah, I spent some time reading Michael Dransfield, and there was a line, elephant,
Never forget.
no, I've forgotten it now under the pressure of events. It was elephant and child was the third in the triadic. But it was very powerful, I thought. Was ant, elephant and child in one of his poems. And it was this way I was sitting in my car in the bush there with William Blake. He really was, many people think, and he has a widening audience, a great poet in his way. What a tragedy to die at 23 or 24. And as he said in one of his poems, if you're a drug addict, you don't want to be anything else. So we have 1,000 poems that can take us to the anything else. I thought I would read two poems about travel, and also salute Nettie Palmer, talking about the world of the 20s and 30s in Australia. I was fascinated by October the 5th, 1929. Yesterday, Catherine Susanna Pritchard arrived on her round trip from Perth. And I think what the words that flow on now give an idea of the physical and mental world some of the resolute Australians of the between the war period represent. Pritchard arrived on a round trip from Perth, a trip that included Singapore. There was some uncertainty about her train. After lunch, we went in to meet her, chasing Louis, who in the meantime come out to Hawthorn to invite us to dinner. Finally, we all met at the Essens. The Essens, Hilda the doctor and Louis the playwright, laid a lot of the frame for Australian dramatic art that is still being filled in and used. Finally, we all met at the Essens over a sumptuous lobster meal, the sort of festival Hilda knows how to produce with miraculous speed and gaiety. Stuart Mackay managed to come in for an hour in the middle of his medical engagements. And as I said, Hilda was a doctor also. Catherine Susanna Pritchard talked of a journey up the West Australian coast, stopping every day at a port, pausing for a wonderful fortnight at Broome, a crowded month at Singapore and inland. In spite of her long days of travel, she looked radiantly alive, physically even more graceful than in the past, her mind teeming with impressions of odd characters, remembered bits of dialogue, her humour and understanding playing about everything like a soft light. She seems to be moving along very buoyantly on a full tide of assurance. Like many people, I think she was a very great writer indeed, but didn't quite take off the runway because of the very restrictive mores of the Australia of its time. Also, she was a woman and a founder of the Communist Party in 1921, which gives her a great future but a difficult contemporaneity. In a way, she's found herself, even in those old days in London. And I found the next paragraph, and it finishes this reading, very interesting. Even in those old days in London, she knew the kind of book she wanted to write. But she was wavery in her approach to life and unsure of her powers. Now, without having lost any of the sensitiveness which made her pace the floor of a Chelsea flat all night, after finishing the newly published Sons and Lovers, she's gained a sort of toughness. She can be deeply moved by the treatment of natives on the stations behind Broome, yet can look at the whole question with clear, unsentimental eyes. And of course, she wrote a great play that wasn't performed for half a century called Brumby Innes, because it did eviscerate the relationship of the frontier and black and white sexuality. Just the poems now, which also have this theme of travel and expansiveness. A poem that haunts many of us. The Whitsun Weddings by Philip Larkin. I'm sure the professor has some of this little ditty in his marrow as it goes along the line. And the second poem will be going along the line, the Northern Rivers Railway line. That Whitsun, I was late getting away. Not till about 1:20 on the sunlit Saturday did my 3/4 empty train pull out, all windows down, all cushions hot, all sense of being in a hurry gone. We ran behind the backs of houses, crossed a street of blinding windscreens, smelt the fish docks, thence the river's level drifting breadth began, where Skye and Lincolnshire and water meet. All afternoon, through the tall heat that slept for miles inland, a slow and stopping curve southwards we kept. Wide farms went by, short-shadowed cattle, and canals with floatings of industrial froth. A hothouse flashed uniquely, hedges dipped and rose, and now and then a smell of grass displaced the reek of buttoned carriage cloth, till the next town, new and nondescript, approached with acres of dismantled cars. At first, I didn't notice what a noise the weddings made. Each station that we stopped at, sun destroys the interest of what's happening in the shade. And down the long, cool platforms, whoops and skulls, I took for porters larking with the mails and went on reading. Once we started, though, we passed them, grinning and pomaded girls, in parodies of fashion, heels and veils, all posed irresolutely, watching us go, as if out on the end of an event, waving goodbye to something that survived it. Struck, I leant more promptly out next time, more curiously, and saw it all again in different terms. The fathers with broad belts under their suits and seamy foreheads, mothers loud and fat, and uncles shouting smut, and then the perms, the nylon gloves and jewellery substitutes, the neons, mauves and olive ochres that marked off the girls unreally from the rest. Yes, from cafes and banquet halls, up yards and bunting dressed coach party annexes, the wedding days were coming to an end. All down the line, fresh couples climbed aboard, the rest stood round, the last confetti and advice were thrown, and as we moved, each face seemed to define just what it saw departing. Children frowned at something dull fathers had never known. Success so huge and wholly farcical, the women shared the secret like a happy funeral, while girls, gripping their handbags tighter, stared at a religious wounding. Free at last and loaded with the sum of all they saw, we hurried towards London, shuffling gouts of steam. Now fields were building plots and poplars cast long shadows over major roads, and for some 50 minutes that in time would seem just long enough to settle hats and say, I nearly died. A dozen marriages got underway. They watched the landscape, sitting side by side. An Odeon went past, a cooling tower, and someone running up to bowl. And none thought of the others they would never meet, or how their lives would all contain this hour. I thought of London spread out in the sun, in postal districts, packed like squares of wheat. There we were aimed, and as we raced across bright knots of rail, past standing Pullmans, walls of blackened moss came close, and it was nearly done, this frail travelling coincidence. And what it held stood ready to be loosed with all the power that being change can give. We slowed again, and as the tightened brakes took hold, there swelled a sense of falling, like an arrow shower sent out of sight, somewhere becoming rain. It reminded me of Rainer Maria Rilke for the first time in my life, I think. I've been reading that for many decades, as many people do regularly, and I will do the next poem because they make a very good set. It's not as long. I thought of Rilke in many aspects, consciously at the end and subconsciously as I was reading. The sense of movement and stillness and transformation of perception, both radiant and in some way, it's a Germanic thing, in some way deathly, but the stars still manage to glint through the emotions and their dress. That's Rilke, isn't it? If anyone here or there knows the great poem of the panther treading its bars in the cage, that my German friends, may they rest in peace, love to read to me throughout my life. And I will always remember the strange look that crossed their face as they embraced or left that panther. There's a Freudian slip. I'd like to go back and look at the poem with a microscope. Okay, another one and we're on our way. A page of writing, Journey, the North Coast. I read this when I came in this evening and I thought, it would go really well with the other train journey that I've known and loved from Word. Journey, the North Coast. And as I come from the Tweed Valley and I took the trip to Sydney and back many times in my life, this poem has a heart space and a space heart for me. Journey, the North Coast. Next thing, I wake up in a swaying bunk, as though aboard a clipper on the sea, and it's the train that booms and cracks. It tears the wind apart. Now the man's gone, who had the bunk below me. I swing out, cover his bed, and rattle up the sash. There's sunlight to come teeming on the drab carpet, and the water sways solidly in its silver basin. So cold it joins together through my hand. I see from where I'm bent one of those bright crockery days that belong to so much I remember. The train's shadow like a bird's flees on the blue and silver paddocks, over fence posts carved from stone and banks of fern, a red bank full of roots over dark creeks with logs and leaves suspended and blackened tree trunks. Down these slopes move, as a nude descends a staircase, the slender white gum trees, and then the countryside bursts open on the sea. Across its calico beach, unfurling, strewn with flakes of light that make the whole compartment whirl. Shuddering shadows, I rise into the mirror rested. I leave my hair ruffled a bit. That way, and fold the pyjamas, stow the book and wash bag. Everything done, press down the latches into the case that for 12 months I've watched standing out of a morning above the wardrobe in a furnished room. I used to love teaching him. I used to love teaching Robert Gray across a classroom blackboard. I had blackboards. I don't think I had a whiteboard when I did Robert Gray. So the world is in transformazione. And what have I been reading? I should finish with Patton, going back to the beginning of the back. But I didn't get far with my book on physics. I like to imagine I'm more scientific than I can be. And I didn't get any further down the track with Dear Pirandello and his man with the flower in his mouth. But I've been listening to Strindberg and thinking that we all have obsessions.
I'm obsessed with poetry. Yeah, mainly because that's what I live in, the Poetry Hall of Fame. I've got nothing else to think about. I don't have any sex, so I don't know. I'm going to invite Doug up, but this one's, when I read it, I thought of you, Doug. It's called Temperance.
Temperance?
Temperance.
How do you know I'm temperance?
I don't know anything, mate.
It's
It's actually called Strength of Character, but the last line is Temperance.
Thank you,
Right?
thank you.
Strength of character, saying no. Contrary to the crowd, against the flow, being flexible, adaptable, navigate the bends, finish what you began through to the end. Strength of character, sing your own song, knowing where to stop and admit when you're wrong. Don't involve yourself in trouble or strife, be an individual and live your own life. Strength of character, positive attitude, not emotionally affected, having gratitude, living in the now, not someone else's then, letting go of how, create your own zen. Strength of character, being on your own, enjoying your own company, being silent, all alone. Trusting in the universe, humility, transcendence. The weak see strength as perverse, strength is temperance.
Thank you.
Doug, come on up. Welcome back, Doug, after a week break. And yeah, really good to have Doug back. Happy Doug's got everybody.
Thank you. Got the Henry Dawson Bible with me. Thank you. I've got a couple of questions. I really appreciate everyone's poems tonight and their sharing and their messages. Call them moral, call them what you like. Help me. Ashley, could I ask, what do you call those things, those rules? What's it called?
That's my idea of
Hypothesis, implications, and
Hypothesis, that's enough. My hypothesis, and bless you, my hypothesis is, I like the F word, but I won't throw on you straight away. It's about do the best you can, brother. That's my hypothesis. Anyway, someone will say, but you've got to do better. I say, you've got to be patient. Okay. Now I'm asking, could I call you a professor?
If you want.
I like your message about the good. The other side kills me quick. Anyway, should I read Lawson first or mine?
Lawson.
Lawson, then
Sounds like a majority. Okay.
Lawson. As you find
Lawson, yeah. Now I've shared this book with your biography of Henry, and I'm about halfway through it, and God, he talks to me. Lifelong alcoholic. I've had a bit of history with the alcohol too. But I'll read again on the back cover. But wronged and cast out, drink sodden, but shunned and insane and unclean. I have dared where few others have trodden. I have seen what few others have seen. That's Henry Lawson from a book he wrote. It's amazing stuff to me. Anyway, I've picked out a few little clips and I'd like to share with you, if I could. One's from his wife, and which is so touching. This was a little piece. We're talking about communism and labour and people getting passionate about all that stuff way back in the 20s and the 1910s and all that. Anyway, this guy in Parliament that stopped the shearers' strike, some guy called Brentnall, he was a sworn enemy of the Labor, and he wanted to get Lawson and arrest him for sedition. But Henry was ready to take on all comers and gave Brentnall a lashing with a follow-up poem, The Vote of Thanks Debate. Anyway, this is his little piece, few lines here. Henry says to this union basher, whatever you want to call it, you hate the cause, capital letter, you hate the cause by instinct, the instinct of your class, and fear the reformation that shall surely come to pass. Your nest is feathered by the laws which you of course defend. Your daily bread is buttered on the upper crust, my friend. He's talking to some of us anyway.
spinning coin.
Pardon?
A spinning coin.
Thank you. Now, this was this is a quote from Henry's wife, Bertha, who was an amazing lady in her own right, apparently. Bertha Lawson, on marrying a famous but struggling writer, and this is her quote, I did not realise the restlessness which always filled Harry's heart and soul, a state which was entirely due to the blood that ran in his veins. The blood that ran in his veins, a wanderer's blood. Couple more, then I can rant on a bit with my own stuff. Now this is a beautiful line from me. Bertha, his wife, is trying to get him off the booze. No such thing as AA or anything like that way back in the end. Don't want to preach about that either. Anyway, I don't quite know who wrote, I guess. Yeah, Lawson wrote this, of course. Lawson on trying to beat the blues by starting or restarting his life as a school teacher in New Zealand. Quote, so he sailed away from the streets of strife. He travelled by land and sea. I love this line. He says, in search of a people who lived a life as life in the world should be. Talks from the heart. Yeah, I guess some of us are looking for that without end. Just about the last one here. And this is when his wife Bertha got into some sort of serious illness and she was in a convalescence. What's it called? The Bethlehem Royal Asylum. And she quotes, do not blame Harry, whatever you do. He has been the best and most considerate husband that ever lived. Come on, one more. Can you get it? No, it's not coming up. Oh, this is the last one. Always touches. This is when Henry is locked up in Darlinghurst. And he does a little thing. Prisoner number 32 wrote the song Prison. And he scribbled it with a pencil on it. The place, someone smuggled in a bit of paper. Actually, the jail pantry man, wife killer George Love, smuggled in a bit of paper. Anyway, a couple of lines here. In Darlinghurst, Lawson noted, staircase and doors of iron, no sign of plan. I'm sorry, stay there. Staircase and doors of iron, no sign of a plank or brick. Ceilings and floors of sandstone, and the cell walls 2 feet thick. Cells like large-sized coffin or a small-sized tomb and white. And it strikes a chill to the backbone on the warmest summer night. There's a bit of pathos. Okay. Do that one. Thanks, Henry. Okay. All right, here we go. Yeah, I've been here for a few days, but I think of you when you're on Wednesday night, and I'm glad to be here. And I was talking right before the meeting about inspiration or any of that, and we have different histories about inspiration, by the way. Here we go. I've shared a few things, and I don't know what you'd say, Rob, but I'd sort of, what we were talking about, I've got to say that I don't think force has anything to do with inspiration. That's all I want to say. I cannot force it. All right, this is called... Oh yeah, one quick thing to say before I read this. One of the things about Henry Lawson, it's kind of like, I suppose, when anyone wants to judge him, and they want to figure out if he was a success. And we just, question that. He didn't seem to be a success. He seemed to be, maybe he died from drink or whatever. And yet, how can I possibly judge his success? How do you judge success anyway? Yeah.
Doing what you love.
Well, it's a very subjective thing to even consider. All right, now here we go. This is called a poem. And it happened today, actually, so it's contemporary, I suppose. Poem. Will be a long one, a short one, a magic or a tragic thing, a dark piece, a light piece, a bleak piece, or a lift you from your grief piece. Whatever comes is what you get. Let it flow. It may be fast, it may be slow. This is poem, this is morning. And actually saw some sunshine this morning which kind of shocked me. The sun does shine, that must be good. At least for now the grey is gone. All this stuff about trains actually has touched my heart. I hear the train of love and hope whistle moan through night just gone. The pulling engine breathes a voice of sweat and toil. The grade it climbs is long. It can take the puff quite out of her. Stay on the rails, you magic thing. You're doing best you can. You think you're doing all the work, and truly, yes you are. And forces strong which can't be seen have given us a spark. The neg boys rave, they'll take me down. They try to drain me vitals. Come help me, helpless, I know you're there. Neg energy which spews the cloudy, hopeless vibe. I tell you straight, they are not me. They are not me. My dignity and beauty holds in spite of forces dark. It's Father's Day around the bend. A father, yes I am. The line of fathers stretches far and distantly beyond my seeing eye. Some say the father watches down. Just get me to my knees. Sons and fathers fight so easy, and though we do our best, we're riding rails we've always rode, still climbing o'er that hill.
Hey, thank you, Doug. Well, I'll ask in a moment, David, to come back on that. I've got one before we go up there. As you probably all know, I don't have a car, but I got 9 wheels, a little scooter, a big scooter, a bicycle and a tricycle. Yeah, because it's flat in Gyra and I can ride my trike up to the shop. So I went for a ride, this was 3 days ago, went for a ride on my trike tonight. There were so many different animals in flight. Oh my goodness, I just got hit by a low-flying duck. This is for you. Oh, next thing I know, yes, it's true, I got hit by a goose too. And after that, I thought they were gone when I rode into a flying black swan. That's the line for you, yeah. At the last moment, from the corner of my eye, I ducked as along came a magpie. Next thing I know, I don't know how I got hit by a swooping cow. Things got crazy and rather big when I got hit by a flying pregnant pig, then a flying hippopotamus, a flying rhinoceros. The brain fell down and washed away the lot of us. And from the sky fell a million green frogs, and after that it was raining cats and dogs, and animals were raining everywhere, falling from the sky into my hair. An idea flashed and I knew what to do. I put up a fence and I built a zoo. You're welcome to come visit if you like. I'll take you for a tour on my trike. But please be careful in the zoo not to tread in the elephant poo. And one last thing, bring a raincoat. He doesn't swoop, but there's a pissing flying goat. Wow, okay. Alright. Yeah, that's what happened so yeah. It must have been that day I saw you and you asked me to write about a swan. And so I'm writing off thinking about like a swan, and that's what bloody well came out. So thank you. Alright, David Melville, come on up.
Yeah, thanks for that. Because of the audience that I do to, I very rarely do serious poems. But I heard this story a couple of years ago, and it fascinated me. And it's supposed to be a true story. I didn't follow it, but they were going to make a movie about this bloke. I never heard any more of it. And I didn't even capture his name, but I threw it down So I haven't done it before, so I'll be interested to see what you think. If I could only remember the first line. This is a true story about a bloke I never knew. He was educated, smart enough to know a thing or two. He fell for that Kiwi call back there in 1914. So he signed up to fight for his king. He was only 16. Now you would have thought the army would have said, "We're sorry, son. We can't take you. We're going to take someone else instead." No, they grabbed him, threw him in uniform and encouraged that war disease. When they thought that he was trained to kill, they sent him overseas. Now, at fighting he was pretty good and his comrades found him reliable. He didn't take a backward step in battle, he led by example. So they promoted him to sergeant. They sent him in to fight again. Now you've got to understand that being a sergeant wasn't granted to that many men. He got wounded and decorated, and he thought that he'd done his country proud. When he was repatriated, his mates held him aloft and sang Old Lang Syne quite loud. Now it's 1918. The people of Australia are proud that their sons and husbands have gone to war. They've saved the women and the children. Who could ask for more? Let's have a parade. Let's celebrate them all. We'll honour those brave Anzacs, the ones who bade that call. So he marched in that first Anzac parade, leading his men down that street. And the women and children waved flags and they threw flowers at his feet. But a few days later he was called out from parade and was quietly spoken to. "We've had a few complaints, son. You're about to march and they all relate to you. We're going to take your stripes and we're going to release you from this great army. Or you can keep those medals, the ones you got for bravery." Now his army mates, they didn't cause an uproar. They just let him pack his kit and silently walk out the back door. Gone were all the principles that we're now told they were fighting for. You're not in the army. We don't need you. Piss off. We don't want you anymore. You see, all the people that watched that march, they were in an uproar. More complaints to the press, the politicians, the army than had ever been made before. How could you let him march on such a great occasion? And to lead white Christian men, it was a blight on our great nation. Oh, he wasn't upset. He wasn't angry. He wasn't even disappointed, you see. Because you've probably realised by now that man was an Aborigine. Now it's years later, and the Anzac Parade has become an annual event. And he and others like him have yet to be made citizens by the government. He's standing there watching that Anzac Parade go past, that Anzac pride shining through, when a voice from the crowd, from the march, calls, "There's our old sergeant. He should be marching too." But the parade moved on because he turned his back and he stood there very still. He was thinking, those men don't know what they did, and perhaps they never will. All right. Just to take it off just to take it off our serious note at the moment. You were talking about those baked beans. I'm coming there from not this time, but I'm heading near a lot. Up in Queensland. I'm coming over the border, and I called into this little shop in one of those towns where all there is a shop. It sells petrol, sells tractor tyres, sells everything, you know. So I go in, and there's no one at the counter, but on the counter there's a sign that says "Beware of the dog." Scared the bloody daylights of me. I really had a heart attack. I looked around, and old Labrador lying on the floor. Anyway, the woman came out and I said, "Jesus Christ!" I said, "I nearly had a heart attack." See that sign there, "Beware of the dog." Shouldn't it be on the front door? Mm-hmm. And that dog there, who'd beware of it? She said, "Mate, till I put that sign there, everyone tripped over that dog." True story. It's your dad, son. Yes, I know, it's been 30 years. Yes, that's right, son, that's right. The nerve to call you has taken more than a few beers. I know, son, I know, you got your own family and I don't break. Oh, come on, son, come on. It's never too late. It's never too late. I just thought you and I could get together. We could take a chance. Well, we could do what we once did. We could watch the Bronga dance. Yes, I know, son, I know. I went to Droven and I never came back. I went to Droven, son. Life sent me down a different track. The call of freedom, son, the ability to just get up and go. The call of the bush, son, it gets to you, you know. Yes, son, I knew I'd lose your love, the price I had to pay. Yes, I knew I'd be forgotten. I thought about that every day. But son, I've driven cattle across the Kimberley when spring flowers were in bloom. I've sheltered brumbies in Kosciuszko when winter storms came in too soon. I've watched dry lakes fill up with fish and bird. And I've watched sunsets in the desert in autumn when there wasn't a sound to be heard. Oh, no, son, no. I did not know that your mother had died. Yes, I should have kept in touch. I should have tried. The call of the bush, son, it was just too strong. Oh, no, son, no. I can't do that, son. I can't say that the choices I made were wrong. Yes, son. Yeah, I just thought we could get together. We could get along. See, the doc tells me, son, that I haven't got that long. Oh, so you're going to hang up, are you? Discontinue this call? Well, I would guess I won't get to see you, son. I won't get to see you at all. I'll just pick myself up and drift back to the bar. Try not to remember. Try not to go back so far. I'll just imagine that you and I took a chance. And we stood shoulder to shoulder, son. And we watched those Bronga dance. Goodbye, son.
Bravo.
Well, thank you.
You'll have to send him a copy of your one-legged Stockman in one of your...
I'm going to do it. I'm going to do the one-legged Stockman in a moment. First, was it Doug said, "What's success?" Ralph Waldo Emerson wrote this. Ralph Waldo Emerson was an American philosopher and he lived from 1803 to 1882, and I screenshotted this last week. To laugh often and much, to win the respect of intelligent people and the affection of children, to earn the appreciation of honest critics and endure the betrayal of false friends, to appreciate beauty, to find the best in others, to leave the world a bit better, whether by a healthy child, a garden patch, or a redeemed social condition. To know even one life has breathed easier because you have lived. This is to have succeeded.
Thank you.
Probably goosebumps from that.
Can I say one thing before I was going to say what I stood up?
Yeah.
Look, I'm heading on my way up to Queensland, and I'm going to call it at the Nimbin World Championships. They're on next Saturday.
The Poetry World Cup.
Poultry World Cup, they call it.
Yeah.
But I was there last year with Paddy,
just
watching, and I'm telling you, if you want to see some young people do absolutely magnificent stuff, it's there on Saturday. You can get down to Nimbin. Starts about 9:30.
Yeah.
Oh,
so the Nimbin Performance Poetry World Cup. It's next week. It's Saturday and Sunday. The heats are on Saturday. There's 4 heats. I think there's
it's not bush poetry. It's
no,
just
it's
proper poetry.
It's
proper poetry, but
it's the Performance Poetry World Cup because it's 8 minutes,
you've got to do 8 minutes.
and you've got to be bang on, because if you go over you lose points, and if you're under you lose points as well.
And this year, because of the flood, it will flood. It will be fantastic.
Well, there's still only 36 entries.
If you want angry people, it's the place to be.
It is, isn't it? Yeah.
Expressive people.
Yeah.
COVID wasn't last year.
But then, one of the best winners has been Tug Dumley 3 times, and he's won it with comedy. And he's great.
Rhyming and meter and everything. But the women were phenomenal last year.
Oh, well, last year, I think it must have been 17 or 18, Sarah Temporal, she's fantastic too, from the Northern Rivers area. She runs Poets Out Loud up there in Morwell.
They call it the World Cup, but it's usually only locals.
Yeah, well, they get Australian-wide people pretty much.
But if by chance you got the time on Saturday, well worth.
Yeah.
They've got 36 entrants.
It's only a gold coin donation entry. Yeah.
Does it get recorded or on Facebook?
They'll only record the final and put it on YouTube.
And the sad thing about it is that some of these young poets get up and are phenomenal, but of course they get carried away, and then they go over their 8 minutes or under their 8 minutes.
Well, because you get up there, and it's really easy to go too fast.
Yeah.
See, when I did it, I had to rehearse so many times to get it bang on 8 minutes.
Yeah.
And people even put up a phone there with a timer on it to do that.
Which I thought was cheating.
It's not actually, but
they don't say so. But
yeah.
But
all right. Well, look, I got one last one, so let's do this, and we'll get it on the road, and we'll finish the show off. This is the one-legged stockman that it was actually Beauty is Once Around the Sun. Beauty is once around the sun, though our eyes may never comprehend poets sent off to war. Boys given guns and told to kill, boys they've never met. It was the year the drought broke, pests in the wheat silo. Silver moon reflects off the lagoon. Black swans have started building nests, marching with packs and rifles. Desert warfare in the trenches. Legless farm boys with bullets embedded. There was a mouse plague run across your face in bed. The stars look very clear tonight. Days become nights, become days blindfolded in the infirmary. Sent home on crutches. Lucky walks in the gate. Dog slinks down, snarls at the stranger. Old Bluey got bit by a taipan. Silhouette gum trees in the sunset. Crepuscular needle, sunlight rays. One-legged stockman. Nobody ever thought he'd ride a horse. Quick cracks. Dog barks. Cattle turn, rivers rising and high. All those full-bellied snakes. Beauty is another trip around the sun. Gratitude is an attitude. Poet, farm boy, soldier, one-legged stockman with a whip, billy of tea on the campfire, Johnny cakes and golden syrup, flies buzz around the swag. Right, well, thanks very much everyone. Don for coming along. I'll show you around the place after this too. Everyone else out there in Facebook, YouTube, thanks for tuning in. We'll see you next week here from the Australian Poetry Hall of Fame. I'm Thundercloud. See you later.
Are you here? You're here tomorrow, aren't you?